What can we learn about filmmaking from Denis Villeneuve? In this week's video, I'm reacting to Vanity Fair's video in which Denis Villeneuve talks about a powerful scene from his movie Dune. My name is Jay Sherer, and I'm a screenwriter, a director, and a film producer. I recently directed a paranormal thriller about UFOs titled Disclosure. It's coming out on this channel on November 1st. All right, let's jump into this video.
Hi, my name is Denis Villeneuve. I'm the director of Dune, and this is Notes on a Scene.
The test is simple. Remove your hand from the box, and you die.
The first thing to say is that Denis Villeneuve is probably one of the best directors working today. So why not study his work and study how he's putting together a scene, which is awesome.
So this is a very iconic scene taken out of the book. Paul Atreides, the hero of the book, will go through some very specific test called the gum jabbar.
Defiance in the eyes, like his father.
I love the production design from a character perspective, but also just from a setting perspective. Obviously, you've got the dark blacks on both sides of the screen, which draws our eye into the middle of the screen where it's better lit. But she's still seated in silhouette. So we know that she's important because she's the only character that we're seeing right now. And yet at the same time, we're not being led into exactly what she looks like. So this is very ominous setting with a very limited lighting. And you can tell that like all that production design behind her is amazing and they spend a lot of time on it. But because it's not the focus of this scene, lighting it and shooting it like this is pretty phenomenal. And now what's interesting about this too is that like it's off balance ever so slightly, right? The two chairs are balanced, but she's not balanced in the seat, which sort of speaks to me that someone's going to walk into this scene. Obviously it's going to be Paul, walk into this scene and begin conversing with her. So like even the foreshadowing of the visual by itself is extraordinary because this is Denis Villeneuve.
Leave us.
I deeply love the idea to start a sci-fi movie in a library. I think it's that the counterpoint of it is kind of beautiful. Why a library? It says a lot of things about Dune's world. There's no computers in this world. In Dune's world, AI has been banned. There's no more artificial intelligence. I asked Greg Fraser, the cinematographer, to bring a level of darkness in the scene that will feel almost like you are having a nightmare.
So a level of darkness, I was talking about the darkness before and how it centers our attention, but yes, and it sets a tone, right? Like we're almost having a nightmare, and it's definitely that. There's a lot of Dune scenes that feel very dreamlike, and obviously is partially because Paul's journey as a character is to go through all of these dream sequences that he had.
It was one of the first scenes I shot with Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, and of course, the great Charlotte Rampling. I knew that I did the right casting.
One of the things that I think is pretty insane from a directorial perspective is that once you've hired the people, think of all the money it's going to cost you if you fire the people and have to start over again. So I think you really do want to hire amazing people. One of the ways that I have tried to figure this out from an independent filmmaking perspective, the number of auditions that I have coming my way is nowhere near the number of auditions that Denis probably has coming his way. So one of the ways I've tried to figure this part of it out and see if I can get the right people in the right roles. One, word of mouth is huge. Ask everybody you know if they know good people that would be good for the roles, and find a casting director that really understands the story and really understands what you're trying to do. I've worked with Cara Sullivan out in California, amazing. Worked with Maya Jerem out here, also amazing. And they all know people, and then they look at the roles, they really get a feel for the roles, and then they cast into those roles. And I will say, as a director, when you show up on set and you're interacting with people, you quickly know, like, did I do the right, did I do a good job? And that's what he's saying right here, even for him, for casting the best performers out there, or I shouldn't say the best, because there's so many good performers that are not famous. And that's like a misnomer that only the most famous performers are awesome. But the most famous performers, being able to cast them is cool, and being able, the fact that they're good in their roles and they were good to work with is super important. I would much rather have somebody who's good to work with than somebody who's just talented but difficult to work with, because I think a working relationship with the actors means better outcomes for the actual film. The other thing I do as an independent director, because again, I don't have all the resources and we're under a time constraint, which he probably was too, is that I like to do table reads, and I'll just get local actors to do table reads, and that gives me a much better feel for who's going to work in this role and who's not going to work in this role. So if I'm at the table read and I'm like, oh, those 3 people are working great, and then there's 5 other people who maybe aren't working as well, I can know that, and then when I go into the casting room, I can be like, this is why this person really wasn't kind of working, but this is why this person was working really well. So just the thing that I've learned in my short time as a director that was really helpful.
You must do everything the Reverend Mother tells you.
She's supposed to be in control of her emotion. She's almost about to hug him, almost about to touch him, but she cannot allow herself to do that because she's in front of the Mother Superior, her having to brought her own son into a test that could mean his death. It shows the tension between the motherhood and being a Bene Gesserit sister.
You dismissed my mother in her own house.
Come here. Kneel.
Here, several things are happening. The Bene Gesserit can use something called as the voice in order to control the other human's will. I thought at the beginning that it could look silly if Timothée had to cross the room like a zombie. And it came into my mind to embrace right away from the beginning the point of view of the character, snap, and he will just awaken in front of her. To make very strong, powerful dollies, camera movement, and at the same time, switching off the lights of the room. I brought this idea in order to create that feeling of disorientation and vertigo.
It's really cool to hear people go through their creative process. He's really understanding the core material, right? Now, this is a film based off of a book. I don't know if he has a screenwriting credit or not. I'll have to look that up. But he's saying I needed to understand the source material well enough to be able to put it on screen. And then, well, how do you put that on screen? And I think that's probably my favorite thing as a director is how do we take this thing that's on paper, on a script or on a screen if you're reading an iPad, how do you take that and translate it into something that an audience is going to see, that they're going to understand? And that was clearly a really cool way of doing it, because if he had him walk like a zombie, that would have been probably not as good, and it would have taken so much time. Not that you couldn't use that time for tension, but the way he does it to get right to the point of what's going on is very cool.
As we are moving the camera, we are not touching the focus, so it means that the characters are diving into the out of focus zone of the image. And also, I must say, it's great editing. Joe cut it. It had to be very, very fast. So it's really like a blink. Will feel disorienting and destabilizing for the audience.
You dismissed my mother in her own house.
Come here. Kneel.
The voice itself of the Reverend Mother, that what came with a lot of experiments.
How dare you use the voice on me?
The lighting here is so subtle and so cool. We know it's in a dark room. We established the library earlier, so we know he's in the library. And the fact that it just pretty much fades to black and we only see like this very faded background works really well, because it makes us pay so much attention to this limited lighting. It's not like it's like brightly lit on his face. So shout out to the DP for getting the lighting, like really nailing the lighting on this. It's really fascinating, and it just draws us into these characters even more. This is another interesting choice from a production design standpoint. I'm sure it's in alignment with the books too, which is cool, but to have netting over her face, and then some of that netting is even like it looks like it's on the what would be her left side of the face. It looks like it's out of focus a little bit, meaning that this could be anybody's grandmother. This could be anybody's. This could be any character, right? We don't really know who this character is, which then puts a little bit of mystery on her, and then makes even Paul more so like what he says to her. How dare you even use the voice on me? He thinks that he must be, good enough that he doesn't have to deal with her, and yet he's having to deal with her.
I deeply love the veil. The idea was to create a feeling of a distant, a religious feeling as well. It's a religious congregation, and I wanted to to have the feeling that there's something about like the medieval nuns, that to have a feeling of someone that is above reality. At the end of the day, it just felt deeply right. Charlotte Rampling was not supposed to wear the veil through all the scene, but quickly I realized that it created a very strong mystery, and she just looked definitely more powerful. And I decided to shoot the whole scene with it, knowing that I had one of the best actresses in the world, hiding almost her face, but I thought it was because I was just seeing her powerful eyes.
Now, what's so cool about that is that he, when you do have this amazing actress and you are going to put her in this movie, for you to then say, you know what, we're going to cover your face so that you're not as visible because it's better for the character and therefore better for the audience, is an awesome choice.
Put your right hand in the box.
The box, one of the very iconic objects. We basically went with the description that was in the book, bringing a feeling of something ancient, something dangerous, something that cast shadows inside. For me, I didn't want to use any visual effects for this scene. I really wanted it to be like a mantle scene, meaning that it will be a scene that will rely into the acting of the actors, and that the actors will express the inner pain without having the help of any visual effects.
This is something that I feel like independent filmmakers like me have to lean into because we don't have a lot of visual effects. But I also feel like one of the things, this is maybe like a philosophy on filmmaking, is that we respond to what's going on with the humans. And so special effects, like let's just take Jurassic Park, which is some of the best special effects that I've ever seen, especially in the 90s as a kid. The movie is not great because there are dinosaurs. Yes, the dinosaurs make the movie better. The movie is great because of the way the humans interact with the special effects around them. So the raptor scene, which is super famous, everybody's broken that down a billion times. But when the kids are in the kitchen and the raptors get into the kitchen, that scene is not as frightening if the kids aren't the ones that we're focused on and their reactions aren't the ones we're focused on. In fact, that scene has some of the worst special effects I think in the film, because there's the puppet hands I think that they use in that scene, or the feet. I can't remember what it is. The feet, I think. And so saying like, hey, look, we're going to not rely on special effects, but we're going to rely upon the way the actors will respond given the stimulus, is drawing us into, oh, how would I respond? It's the human reaction. If you make it too much of a special effect, you can actually remove the humanity from the scene, and then I don't think it plays as well with people.
Your mother bade you obey me.
Greg and I tried to create a feeling of oppression and making sure that the room felt closing on Paul, there is no way to escape. The Reverend Mother is designed to make sure that she will look like towering over him.
Just watched a video on power dynamics. I think it was a Studio Binder video. Studio Binder has great videos, by the way. Definitely recommend checking out their videos. But the power dynamics of a scene, and having her be so much taller than him gives her so much power in the scene. And he's sort of annoyed that she has that level of power, right? So you instantly create all of this conflict because he doesn't think she should have the power, but she does have the power, and he has to do what she says. And that's really interesting from a conflict standpoint. So the more and more conflict we can put into our films, like the better it works out.
Honestly, frankly, it's one of my favorite shots of the movie. Why? Because it's all there. You have the power of Charlotte Rampling, the Reverend Mother, towering over Paul. And there will be here a connection, a mental connection, where Paul will experience tremendous amount of pain coming from nerve induction. The science fiction here is more about the evolution of the human brain.
One of the things I love that he keeps bringing up, because so far all of my films have been sci-fi films. We have No Vacancy, which is the posters up on the wall behind me, and we have Disclosure coming out on November 1st. He's very into the sci-fi aspects of it, right? And I think that is cool because it speaks to sci-fi fans. If you really appreciate the subject matter and the material, then I think that you appreciate the fact that Denis is a fan just like we are fans.
I hold at your neck the gomme java, a poisoned needle.
Now, I don't know if he's going to talk about this, but that shot is awesome. To dolly around his head like that. Now we're looking at her. and we want to see her face because she's the one speaking. So it gives us, when we saw her lift the thing up to his neck, but we didn't really see what it was exactly. And so then this shot where we dolly back over
The Gom Jabbar.
right there, the focus work on that is amazing. So going from a face to then a close up on this needle at his neck is a really, really cool idea. I think sometimes camera movement is overutilized because we're trying to make up for maybe a weakness of the script, or there's a lack of conflict, and so we're trying to create conflict with the movement of the camera. And I'm not saying that that's bad, but sometimes I think it's over relied upon. It's like, well, just let me see what's going on in the scene. This is a distinct example of utilizing camera movement to capture the most amount of conflict in the scene. She's telling me something, I'm already mad at her, we're seeing her through his eyes, she has the veil on, and then we move over to the immediate danger, which is phenomenal.
Poison needle. Instant death.
Here in that specific moment, I wanted Charlotte to jump on him like a snake. It needed to be surprising and at a superior speed. We rehearsed with Charlotte Rampling to have to find that position. That was the way I imagined Charlotte holding the needle. And for me, there's something very delicate and very powerful, like a scorpion right now, ready to strike. And it's a very feminine position, but in the same time, it's all death.
Look how much he cares about every little detail and aspect. And obviously, he's collaborating with these actors as well, and I'm sure that they care. But the fact that somebody cares this much about the film, I think that when you watch films, you can understand how much people care about them by just observing the film itself. And the more someone cares about it, I think the more we care about it as an audience. So again, shout out to Denis for being one of the best.
The test is simple. Remove your hand from the box, and you die.
What's in the box?
Pain. No need to call the guards. Your mother stands behind that door. No one will get past her.
These shots are pretty amazing. So we go from this shot to this shot, which I think is a phenomenal shot. First of all, the lighting in this shot is amazing, and the way that she's in the door. Now, it's slightly off-centered a little bit to the right, which is kind of interesting to me. At least it looks like it on my screen. But the fact that she's like in front of this giant door and it goes along with what the lady is saying. You know, a lot of films might not have cut out to this shot to show that his mom is out here and that she's in this kind of setting. But the fact that they do is really gorgeous. Plus, you have this follow-up shot coming right after this shot, which is also amazing. One of my favorite scenes, probably in film history, is the newsroom scene from Citizen Kane. I have a video on Citizen Kane on this channel. You can go watch me talk about that particular scene because it's amazing. But one of the reasons I love it is because it plays with light so well. And this is another play on light, right? Like we're using the silhouettes of characters with a lit background, but it still seems like oppressive, and it seems quiet, but it seems, you know, like we know that Paul is in a place where he's being forced to be quiet, and then everything else around them is also very quiet, and yet he's building tension in us because we know it's not going to stay quiet because he's going to go through all this pain.
Paul's character is understanding that first he has been trapped, but that more importantly, it has been trapped by his own mother. That will create a tension that will go through the whole movie after.
Why are you doing this?
An animal caught in a trap will gnaw off its own leg to escape. What will you do?
That's a line that is taken straight from the book. There's so much great lines in the book, of course. Every time I had a question or a doubt, I always went back to the book.
There's this interesting thing I think that happens with different directors, and everybody's different, right? There's nobody that's similar. I mean, there's people that are similar, but there's nobody that's the same. And I've encountered sort of two different kinds of people when they direct. One is there's this romanticization of artistry that isn't planned. And so it's kind of like, hey, look, the script is there, but we don't even care about the script. Throw it out the door, and like we'll see what we can capture on this day. We kind of know where we need to get from point A to point B, and like we'll just try to get there. And then there's this other style, which is more my style because I come from a writing background. I don't have any film school credits or anything. I've just watched a bunch of movies, and I've studied screenwriting and storytelling a ton. So when I approach this, I'm always going back to my source material, which is my script, and I'm always going exactly how what is the script trying to communicate? What conflict is it trying to generate? Where do we need to get to? Why do we need to get there? Is this working with the characters? Why or why not? And occasionally you have to throw that out and just kind of go with something different. But I love the fact that Denis values the book so well and is even using lines from the book to tell the story. I think that's phenomenal.
It was like the Bible. It was the holy words. I mean, it was like the way to stay in contact with Frank Herbert. I have deep respect and admiration for him. He's one of my favorite authors, and I wanted to make sure if he had seen this movie, he would have feel that love.
I just finished watching The Shining for the first time. I should probably do a video on that movie because it's directed incredibly well. I mean, Stanley Kubrick, right, the legend. It's directed amazingly well. But after I finished watching it, I was like, man, I don't like this movie because I feel like, well, I'll save that for the video that I'm going to do on The Shining. I didn't like the movie, but it was filmed amazing. Like, it was filmed from a super creepy standpoint, but there was something about the storytelling that I feel like was lost. And so I started talking to my friends and they were like, oh, you really have to read the book because the book is all the things that you don't like about that are actually present in the book and you would love the book. So I'm now reading the book. But the difference between Denis Villeneuve and Stanley Kubrick is Stanley Kubrick said, the framework of a story is here. I'm going to create this version of it. And people love that version. Okay. So there's, I'm not saying it's terrible. I'm just saying it didn't resonate with me. But when you see Denis Villeneuve saying, like, I would want the creator to tell me that this was the movie that should have been created based on what the original creation was, he has a very distinct difference from Stephen King, who doesn't really like Stanley Kubrick's version. And I totally understand why. Even just reading the first few chapters of the book, I can totally understand that, like, oh, the lead character is a different human being than the lead character in the movie of The Shining. And it just sets up a completely different scenario and a different storyline because of that.
A tiny clue that there's something happening deep inside that box that we have no idea what it is, but the way Timothée moved gently his hand here is, like, for me, dead perfect. This is exactly the intention that I asked him to do in this moment, just like a tiny suggestion that he's starting to feel something inside that doesn't feel right.
Oh.
I love the fact that there are subtleties happening. So it doesn't, this was a description I heard on NPR one time, and it was a opera singer talking about dopamine and how dopamine affects the brain. And she was talking about how when she was a young singer, she would always concentrate on the high notes because that's the thing that gets you all the glory. That's what people care about. And she was talking about that. And she said all of the older, more experienced performers kept telling her, don't neglect all of the notes that lead up to the high note, even things that happen, 15 minutes prior in the story. You have to weave all of those together. And the principle behind that, and she explained this really well, is that it's the pre-work that builds dopamine in the brain, and then the high note releases dopamine in the brain. And this is why, people complain about attention spans on TikTok and stuff like that, because you're getting dopamine hits in a different kind of way. You're not building towards a dopamine hit because you don't have enough time to do that. You're just delivering dopamine hits very, very quickly, going straight to the high notes, if you will. And I love the fact that there's these subtleties being worked into this scene that bring about a high note later on of conflict that we're going to get to in a minute here. But all these little things that are causing us to build dopamine, to build tension, to build conflict. And that's like excellent storytelling.
Silence.
I will say, for the record, Timothée was afraid of Charlotte Rampling for real.
That acting is pretty amazing, dude. I mean, the fact that it looks like he's being hurt is phenomenal. That's really, really cool. And then the fact that we get a chance to look at her outside. I wondered earlier why we were showing her outside when she's outside the door. Well, now we know, because she's going to be reacting to this scene the whole time as if she can feel what he's feeling. And obviously she's very worried, which then again, so this is again going back to the characters. There's no special effects here, but by showing us the characters in pain, by showing us her in pain, worried about her son, and then by showing her son in pain, it just builds up in us this sense that like, oh, this is conflict. We don't like this. This is uncomfortable, because of the humans in the scene is really what's making that happen.
I must not fear. Probably the most famous word coming out of the book. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. It was one of the first scenes that I did with Rebecca Ferguson here. And I asked Rebecca to experience like a kind of quiet, sheer panic. She will slowly being able to control the emotion. For me, Rebecca Ferguson is a Stradivarius. I mean, her level of precision is absolutely insane. And I got exactly what I needed in order to express what I wanted to do with this scene.
Yeah, one of the things that's really interesting to work with actors on, and I personally am not skilled enough to do this in the room, although I try to do it in the room as much as I can, obviously, as we all do. But one of the things that I try and do a lot is do pre-work. I'll also work with actors on their backstories, even though I wrote the story and I have backstories for all the characters. One of the things I'll do is I'll ask the actors if they want to write their own backstory. And the reason I do that is because, to me, what it does is it no longer makes the character mine as the writer or the director, but it makes the character ours as the team that's working on it. The relationship between me and the actors, the relationship between the actors and each other. We are all now going into this thing wanting to bring ourselves to the table, having the opportunity to bring ourselves to the table and formulate these characters and formulate these storylines as a group as opposed to just one person. And but one of the things that I love a lot is performers who can tell stories with their facial expressions. And like for Colleen Tressler on No Vacancies, just does an amazing job of like face control and like little tiny eye movements. That's something that I just really appreciate as a director and as a film goer, somebody who loves film, is watching the subtleties of performances. And the fact that he says that Rebecca Ferguson can be so precise is really cool, because precision is something that, like, I feel like I would have a hard time being an actor, because having to just do the repeated thing over and over and over again and be precise every single time you do it. Not that you can't try new things and do different things, but being precise, I think, would be very tiring and it would really wear you out. But some of the actors out there that we've had a chance to work with have been amazing at it.
We hear the sound here that is coming from a combination of Hans Zimmer that designed for this moment in the movie one of the most harrowing and unbearable score ever written for a scene where you have the impression to be at the dentist.
Fear's the mind killer.
So this is another cool thing about filmmaking that I really talk about a lot, because it's just really instrumental, I think, to the process. And I learned about it in college. My professor gave me a book called The Art of Dramatic Writing. And in that book, Leos Agree, which I'm pronouncing his name wrong, he talks about the premise of the film. And I think some people will use premise and concept sort of interchangeably, but they're really not, in my opinion, interchangeable. The premise, the way that I've learned to define it, which is not really necessarily how he defines it, but I'm trying to take his words and give my own words to it, is the shared human experience. So when you hear Denis say, this is like going to the dentist, that's a shared human experience. We have been to the dentist. We know what the drill sounds like. We know that the drill is doing what? Causing nerve pain. It can, if they don't numb you up correctly. And so because we have that shared human experience, we can then understand what Paul is going through a little bit better. And that shared human experience is so important. And looking for ways that you can bring that shared human experience in is, I think, super critical.
is the little death that brings obliteration.
Here again, what's one of my favorite sound of the movie. It's actually a Hans Zimmer sound. I think it's made out of a kind of crazy scream from human voices that are like compressed 1 billion times. And it's like Hans drove his team crazy with those sounds.
And I'll face my fear, not permit it to pass over me and through me.
So here, it's a very, 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 very important key moment in the scene, which is that Paul is put under so much pain. Something deep inside in subconscious that was hidden there will go closer to the surface. The presence of the what we call the Kwisatz Haderach, a kind of a super being.
The look up from Timothée Chalamet combined with the Hans Zimmer score there changes the whole dynamic of the scene suddenly, right? Because we saw her, she's in power, she's causing him pain, the box is causing him pain, but it's through her. She's forcing it, she has the thing to his neck. And then the fact that he looks up at her like that and we get that hit of music, what we're basically saying is, oh, she's no longer in control of this room. Paul has awakened something in him that's more powerful.
I think that in this scene, we have to feel that the Reverend Mother will love to kill Paul, but she will not, because she will witness something here. In this very specific moment, we can see in Charlotte Rampling eye here that she has doubt, that she's the birth of a fear, that he could be maybe the one.
Such a dope moment. I mean, I'm just watching him explain the scene and I'm still getting goosebumps.
We were like shifting from the Reverend Mother to Paul, having them in confrontation mode, having them in a dirty double shot, meaning that you have the presence of the other character in the foreground, try to create a feeling of oppression. Paul is taking the upper side of the scene, coming out from this very specific close-up where we felt that he channeled something that he was not expecting. I decided to push the camera on Timothée Chalamet, so we will feel that he's now taking power in the scene.
I think it's really cool to do really subtle pushes. I mean, push-ins can be for lots of different reasons. The Duffer Brothers. I'm rewatching Stranger Things because obviously we get season 5 this year, so it's amazing. One of my favorite shows. And the Duffer Brothers love a push-in, and they're almost always using push-ins to highlight the character emotions and make us as the audience like excited for what's going to happen or fearful of what's going to happen. The fact that this is a very, very just slow push-in, it's almost as if something is building in Paul, and as that thing builds in Paul, we're pushing in on him, and it's very, very slow, which means that there's got some gravity to it almost, which is fun.
The ignorance is both. And where the fear is gone, there will be nothing.
One of the things I think is really interesting about the way this film was done, and it's not just this scene, it's the whole film, is that we always are getting glimpses of what Paul is seeing in the future and or the past, and it gives us this very odd feeling that we don't know what the future actually holds, because we see things happen that don't actually happen. We see things happen that do happen. And so it's almost like Paul is seeing all of these potential futures, but we don't know which one is gonna be the future that we encounter when we were watching the actual movie and in real time what happened. So it's a very disorienting feeling that I think is pretty cool to add in there.
I wanted these visions to be as close to our own dream experience. I thought that it would be very dramatically interesting to have a character that has awakened visions, but doesn't have the key to understand the puzzle.
Enough.
Huge shout out to Timothée Chalamet on that scene, because all the performers, Rebecca Ferguson and the other lady as well, because it's amazing. It's the subtle intensity of it all and what it's signaling for what will come in the movie is fantastic.
I read the book 40 years ago. I deeply felt in love with it. I was aware that there are millions of hardcore fan of the book out there, but I took upon my shoulder to deal with the one that I was the most afraid of, which is me. I was a teenager that was a totalitarian dreamer. I was arrogant. I was pretentious. I had big dreams. It was kind of frightening for me. And I will say that the truth is, as any movies, movies are made of victories and failures. There's some moments in Dune that I knew I was not good enough. There's others that I feel that I was very close to the original dream.
So there you go. There's how you break down that scene. Really cool stuff to learn from Denis. Phenomenal scene. Really makes sense in the context of the whole film. The other thing I love about what Denis is saying at the end here is that he's saying, I'm making the movie for myself. I think sometimes when studios get involved in productions too much, and there's this idea that maybe you're making it too much for an audience as opposed to what you really feel called to share about the human experience. And he had a distinct experience reading that book, and that experience, I love what he's talking about, because he says he was arrogant and he felt like he could do a lot of things. And yet if you watch the first Dune, you get the feeling that, and I say this in my video about Dune. I have a video about Dune you can go check out. Dune Explained, and who is Paul Atreides, I think it's called. And you think that it's going to be the traditional hero's journey. You think that, it's this kid who needs to just live into this power that he has, and he needs to put away his adolescence and then turn into a man and take the power that he needs to take. Very much like Luke Skywalker, right? Very hero's journey, traditional hero's journey. But when you see the second film, or if you finish the book, what you really understand is that, like, oh no, it is not the hero's journey at all. It is something very different, and it is almost what it takes to be at the top is not what you imagine it being. It's not integrity. It's not honesty, and but it's you had to undermine people and betray people, and all of these things happen in these films. And I think that what Denis is saying here is that he felt like he maybe was on the hero's journey until he realized and was really terrified that sometimes the hero's journey is not the answer. Now, before I wrap this video up, here's a quick recap of some of the things that I learned or was reminded of today watching Denis Villeneuve talk about this awesome scene from Dune. 1, care passionately about your products because the audience will be able to feel that passion. 2, focus on the shared human experience. It draws the audience into the film at a deeper level. The fact that he was talking about the sounds of the dentist office as he's experiencing nerve pain is just phenomenal. Be a student even as you execute. The fact that Denis respects Frank Herbert and constantly goes back to the source material is very encouraging. Now, if you're a science fiction fan like me and you love thinking about UFOs and paranormal phenomena, make sure you're subscribed to this channel so you can watch my film Disclosure on November 1st, 2025. Did you see something else that I missed? If you have a question I didn't address or another idea on the topic, please leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If there's another scene you'd like me to react to, let me know that as well. Thanks for watching. And when it comes to UFO disclosure, who knows the truth? Disclosure is coming November 1st.